Have you ever wondered why the problems that feel so big today, a year from now, often turn out to be nothing? Have you ever woken up in the morning only to have every plan you made for the day completely fall apart? Yet somehow you still felt calm. And what if I told you that simply changing your perspective could turn a raging storm in your mind into a still, quiet lake? Would you believe me? When I was younger, I was just like most people. I let everything around me decide how I felt. One careless comment from someone could keep me up all night. One small mistake could haunt me for weeks. But then I came across a passage from Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, and it completely changed how I saw the world. He called it the view from above. It sounds simple, but I want you to understand this isn't some quick trick to forget your problems. It doesn't change your reality, but it changes your relationship with that reality, and sometimes that's all we really need. Picture this. You're sitting in a small room with 4 walls closing in. Inside that room, everything feels big and overwhelming. An unpaid bill, a phone call you haven't returned, a memory you wish you could undo. But then, you close your eyes, and you imagine yourself rising up above the ceiling. You see yourself sitting there, surrounded by those thoughts. You rise higher. You see your house, your city, your country, and then the earth, quietly floating in the vastness of space. And suddenly, the things that kept you up at night are nothing more than tiny specks, and you realize maybe you've been letting grains of sand block your view of the entire sky. I have a friend named Daniel. At 55, he lost his job, his home, and even his partner. He once told me, "John, I thought my life was over. But one night, I sat out on the porch looking at the stars, and I realized I'm just a tiny piece of this endless picture. And because of that, my losses are just a small part of it." Strangely enough, at that moment, I felt lighter. That's the view from above. It doesn't ask you to deny your pain, but it does keep you from drowning in it. Psychologists today call this cognitive distancing, creating mental space between yourself and the problem. When you step back, you see more clearly, you stay calmer, and you make wiser decisions. The Stoics were doing this over 2,000 years ago, long before the term existed. They didn't call it cognitive distancing. They simply called it clarity. And I know that for many of us in our 50s and 60s, we've lived long enough to understand something important. We can't control everything. We can't make someone love us. We can't stop time from moving forward. We can't hold on forever to the things we wish we could keep, but we can always choose how we see them. I want you to try something. Next time someone makes you angry, next time bad news hits, next time your mind starts spinning in circles about all the should-haves and what-ifs, stop. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes. Picture yourself rising up, higher and higher. Look down and see yourself as just one small part of the vast flow of time and space. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I can tell you this. Every time I do, I feel just a little more free. Not because the problem disappears, but because I'm no longer its prisoner. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. You can't control what happens out there, but you can choose how your mind responds. And when you see the bigger picture, the little things lose their grip on you. Overthinking doesn't go away when you finally find all the answers. It goes away when you accept that you don't need all the answers. You're allowed to rest. you're allowed to let go. And sometimes, simply changing your perspective is enough to bring your peace back. So the next time a storm rises in your head, don't try to shut it down. Rise above it. Let your heart take in the whole sky. And then, when you come back down to the present moment, you'll see it's far more beautiful than you thought. When you zoom out far enough, the big worries turn out to be small details. I don't say that to dismiss your feelings. I've lived long enough to know that when you're in the middle of a storm, every wave looks huge, but the truth is, we often forget that the ocean is much, much bigger than any single wave. A few years ago, one of my students, Michael, came to see me with dark circles under his eyes. He'd been losing sleep for an entire week, all because he'd sent an important client an email with one awkwardly worded sentence out in his mind. This mistake was going to ruin the deal, damage his reputation, and bring everything crashing down. So I suggested he try an exercise the Stoics had been using for over 2,000 years. The view from above. We sat together in a quiet room. I told him to close his eyes and imagine looking down at himself from the ceiling. Then higher, seeing the whole house. Higher still, the entire city. Then the country. And finally, the earth itself, slowly turning in the vastness of space. Then I asked him, Michael, in this enormous picture, where's that email? He laughed. I can't see it anymore. Modern science calls this cognitive distancing, creating mental space between yourself and the problem. When you step back, your brain's stress response cools down. Your heart rate slows, and the part of your mind that makes good decisions switches back on. The Stoics had a simpler name for it: staying clear-headed. The truth is, most things in life only feel important because we blow them up in our minds. An unanswered text, a cold look from someone, a careless comment. All of them can turn into monsters if we stare at them too closely. But when we step back, those monsters shrink into nothing more than pebbles along a long road. Let me ask you, have you ever let one small thing ruin an entire day, only to realize later it didn't matter at all? Have you ever let someone's words live rent-free in your head, even though they probably forgot about it hours later? If your answer is yes, you're not alone. I've been there too. It's taken me decades to learn that most of what we worry about today won't mean a thing a few years from now. I remember one morning, I woke up with a perfectly planned workday. But within 2 hours, everything went sideways. My computer crashed, a meeting was canceled, and I got a text saying a close friend was in the hospital. For a moment, I almost let it pull me into a spiral. But then I remembered the view from above. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and rose above it all. From up there, I saw the city still moving, millions of people going to work, loving each other, laughing. The world wasn't ending. Only my little plan for the day had changed. When I opened my eyes, I was calmer. Calm enough to take on each thing, one at a time. The beauty of zooming out is that it doesn't require you to be a philosopher or a monk. You just have to be willing to step outside the small circle of your own life. When you stand far enough back, you realize that email you're stressing over can't possibly define your whole life. The person who hasn't texted you back is just one human being among billions. And you yourself are just one small part of a much bigger picture. It might sound small, but that's actually freeing. Because when you're no longer drowning in the little things, you finally have space to live fully for the things that truly matter. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Consider how ephemeral and mean human things are, and what was yesterday a speck Of dust will tomorrow be the same again. If you're hearing this right now, maybe you're carrying something heavy in your heart. I want you to know, you have permission to set it down. You have permission to take a step back and see it for what it is, just a tiny dot in the vast canvas of your life. And when you do, you'll see that canvas is still beautiful, even if a few details are missing. I've lived more than 6 decades, and one of the most valuable lessons I've learned is this: we don't have to know everything. It sounds simple, but for many of us, especially those who've spent a lifetime carrying responsibility, not knowing can feel impossible to accept. We grew up in a world that taught us we must have the answer. We must find the solution. We must have everything under control. But the truth is, life has never worked that way. I remember when I was in my early 30s, I lost my job and my marriage in the same season. I sat alone in an empty room, asking myself, why is this happening to me? What am I going to do next? Why didn't I see it coming? I tore through books, asked friends, sought advice, but the answer never came. And that silence made me feel like I was failing. It wasn't until much later that I understood. The answer didn't come not because I hadn't searched hard enough, but because it simply wasn't time for me to know. Some truths only reveal themselves when you're ready to understand them. And sometimes the only way to be ready is to stop trying to hold on to everything all at once. The Stoics called this accepting the limits of being human. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others. Occupy yourself with what lies in your own power." What lies within our power isn't knowing everything. It's accepting that there are things we will not know yet, and things we may never know at all. And instead of letting that uncertainty become a source of anxiety, we can let it become a space to rest. Let me ask you, have you ever stayed up all night trying to guess what someone else was thinking about you? Have you ever worn yourself out because you needed to know the outcome before you could act? And have you noticed that most of the answers we desperately search for often turn out to be unimportant in the long run? I once worked with a woman named Linda, 62 years old. She'd been a teacher all her life, used to having the answer to every student's question. But when her husband fell seriously ill, and the doctors couldn't say for sure whether he'd recover, she nearly fell apart. She told me, "I feel like I've been dropped in the middle of the ocean, with no map and no compass." I said, "Linda, sometimes the only map you need is the sky." What I meant was, lift your head, take a deep breath, and accept that some journeys will be walked in the dark. And even in the dark, you can still take steady steps. Step by step, you'll get to where you need to be, even if you don't yet know exactly where that is. Science agrees with this. Modern psychology research shows that when people learn to accept uncertainty, their stress levels drop dramatically and their decision-making improves. In other words, not knowing doesn't make you weak. It frees up your energy to focus on what you can do right now. But I understand, this isn't easy. We've been taught that control equals safety. Yet the truth is, absolute control is an illusion. You can't control tomorrow's weather, someone else's mood, or the sudden turns life might take. The only thing you truly control is how you respond. I want you to try a simple image. Picture yourself in a small boat, out on the open ocean. You don't know exactly where the storm might come from, or when the fish might appear, but you do know how to keep your oars steady. And you know you'll keep rowing until you reach the shore. Life works the same way. You don't need to know every single variable. You just need to hold steady to what you can do right now. One action, one decision, one deep breath, and leave the rest to life itself. There's a quote from Epictetus I've never forgotten. Some things are up to us, and some are not. When you can clearly tell the difference between what belongs to you and what doesn't, you feel lighter. And the miracle is, that lightness actually helps you handle the problem more effectively. So next time you find yourself straining to have all the answers, from why someone hasn't texted you back to what's going to happen next year, remember this. You're allowed not to know. You're allowed to rest. And sometimes, the empty space of not knowing is exactly where your mind finds peace again. Not every door needs to be opened right away. Some doors will open when the time is right, when you're ready to walk through them. Until then, enjoy the hallway you're standing in. Because maybe, just maybe, this hallway is an important part of your journey too. I used to think that if I worked hard enough, planned thoroughly enough, and prepared for every possible scenario, the outcome would always go my way. But after many years of living, I've had to accept a hard truth. Life doesn't run according to my plans. The Stoics said this over 2,000 years ago. They reminded us, you don't control the outcome, you only control your inner state and your perspective. It sounds simple, but truly living this way takes a lifetime of practice. I still remember 2008, when the financial crisis hit. I lost more than half of my savings in just a few months. Every retirement plan I had evaporated like smoke. Each day I turned on the financial news, hoping the markets would rebound. But the more I watched, the more anxious I became. Then an old friend, a former Marine, said something I'll never forget. John, you can steer the boat, but you can't control the waves. That's when it hit me. I couldn't control the market, but I could control my response. I could choose to panic and sell everything. Or I could take a deep breath, review my plan, and adapt. I chose second path. And that choice to stay calm is what saved me from making much bigger mistakes. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength isn't about forcing the world to bend to your will. It's about standing steady, even when the world shifts around you. It's the strength of knowing exactly where the line is between what you can control and what you can't. I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time you felt disappointed with the outcome of something? Was it because you didn't give your best effort? Or because the result was never really in your control to begin with? I once coached a man named Robert, 64 years old, who was running for a seat on the city council. He worked tirelessly meeting voters, preparing for debates, crafting his platform. But when the results came in, he lost by a slim margin. Robert was crushed. He told me it felt like all his work had been for nothing. I asked him, "Robert, what was your goal when you started?" He said, "To serve my community." I smiled and said, "Then you've already succeeded. Win or lose, that's just a number. But the conversations you started, the ideas you shared, the trust you built, that's what you controlled. And that's what will last." Modern science backs this up. Psychologists call it the locus of control. People who focus on their internal locus, on the things they can directly influence, tend to be less anxious, more resilient, and happier, no matter what happens on the outside. But if you let your mind depend on the external locus, the outside events and results, you'll live like someone stranded at sea, letting each wave decide your mood. And I know, by the time we reach our 50s or 60s, Most of us have learned that life rarely goes according to our script. Some dreams are left unfinished. Some relationships end sooner than we hoped. Some projects fail completely. But if you cling to it, has to work out, or it has to happen my way, you'll end up locking yourself in the prison of disappointment. The Stoics teach us a different path. Focus on the process and your state of mind. When you put your energy into what you actually control, your effort, your values, your attitude, you can find peace even when the outcome isn't what you hoped for. Picture this. You're a gardener. You plant the seeds, water them, tend the soil. You do everything in your power. But you can't control the weather or stop pests from showing up. The harvest might be abundant, or it might fail. But if every day you cared for that garden with dedication, then no matter how the season ends, you can still be proud of the work you've done. Life is the same way. The outcome is just one part of the story. What matters more is how you lived, how you faced each challenge, and how calm you remained in the middle of change. Epictetus once said, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." When you live this way, you stop fearing the future. Because you know, whatever happens, you've already done everything you could, with a steady mind and an honest heart. And that is enough. So the next time you start worrying about an outcome, a job interview, a project, a relationship, remind yourself, the outcome isn't mine, but my mindset is. Then, put all your focus into keeping your mind clear, your heart open, and your actions aligned with your values. In the end, the real victory isn't getting everything you want. It's staying true to who you are in the middle of what you can't control. And here's something I've learned after years of listening to people and watching human nature. Overthinking rarely comes from pure intelligence. Most of the time, it's fueled by fear. At first glance, it looks like careful preparation. You're thinking through every possibility, playing out every scenario, analyzing every detail. Sounds smart, right? But if you're honest with yourself, you'll see, most of the time, you're not really preparing. You're trying to create a sense of absolute safety, something life has never promised and never will. I still remember many years ago, I tried to start a small shop. Before I even opened the doors, I spent months asking myself, what if no customers show up? What if I pick the wrong location? What if the economy tanks? I wrote out dozens of backup plans, calculated every penny, and replayed every worst-case scenario in my head over and over. I told myself I was planning, but the truth was, fear of failure was running the show. And because of that fear, I hesitated, delayed, and almost missed the opportunity entirely. The Stoics were crystal clear about this. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." When you're overthinking, you're living in a world your imagination built, a world where everything might go wrong, and you're the one who has to stay on constant alert. Fear whispers, if you think about it just a little more, you'll be safe. But the reality is, you never feel safe enough. I want you to ask yourself, how many times in your life have you pictured the absolute worst-case scenario, and it never happened? How many hours have you wasted worrying about things completely outside your control? I once worked with a man named George, 59 years old, who was about to retire. But instead of enjoying his free time, he spent nearly all of it obsessing over whether he'd have enough money to last the rest of his life. He ran hundreds of spending scenarios, dug through every economic forecast, but he wasn't living. He stopped enjoying time with his wife, lost interest in trips and hobbies, all because fear had disguised itself as preparation and taken over his mind. Psychologists have a name for this: intolerance of uncertainty. When you can't accept that some things are unknown and uncontrollable, your brain tries to compensate by thinking even more. But thinking more doesn't give you control over the future. It only drains you and feeds your anxiety. The Stoics took a different path. They didn't search for perfect safety in the future. They built steadiness in the present. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that no matter what tomorrow brought, he could still choose to keep his mind calm today. Let me tell you another story. A friend of mine, David, lost his job at 52. He fell into the same overthinking spiral. So many of us know too well. What if I can't find another job? What if I lose my house? What if my kids have to drop out of school? One day, I invited him to go fishing. Sitting by the lake, I asked, "David, how many of those what-ifs are guaranteed to happen?" He sat in silence for a long time, then said, "Honestly, none of them have happened yet." I smiled. "Then why are you living as if they already have?" Right then, it hit him. He'd been letting fear take the wheel, not preparing for the future in a healthy way, but over-preparing, clinging to control, instead of doing what he could and leaving the rest to life. Overthinking is like standing in the rain, trying to guess when lightning will strike instead of looking for shelter. You can't control the sky, but you can always control your next step. And here's how. I've learned to step out of that storm after more than 30 years of practicing Stoicism. Name the fear. Call it out. Don't let it hide behind logic or planning. Put a time limit on thinking. Give yourself a window to plan. Then stop. Act within your control. Take one small, clear step you can do today. Here's what I want you to remember. Overthinking doesn't make you better prepared. It just wears you out before the game even starts. Smart preparation means acting on what you do know, accepting what you don't, and staying ready to adapt when life throws a curveball. The Stoics didn't live carelessly, but they also refused to live in a prison built out of worst-case scenarios. They knew every plan has limits. And that real strength comes from standing firm when things don't go according to plan. So if you ever find yourself stuck in a mental loop, try asking, am I preparing? Or just trying to calm my fear? Is what I'm worried about actually happening, or just living in my imagination? And if it does happen, do I believe I can handle it? If your answer is yes, then maybe. You don't need to keep thinking about it. You just need to keep living. I've lived long enough to know that when we're in the middle of a problem, it can block out everything else, like holding a coin so close to your eye that it hides the entire sky. But the truth is, the sky is still there, wide, endless, untouched. You've just held the coin too close. The Stoics always remind us, your problem does not define your entire reality. You're just one small part of life's vast picture, and your problem, no matter how big it feels, is just a single brushstroke in that picture. I remember a few years ago, I lost a close friend to illness. At that time, the grief felt like it covered everything. I would wake up and feel like the whole world had turned gray. But one morning, I went for a walk in the park. I saw kids laughing, grandparents doing their morning exercises, and the sun rising brilliantly on the horizon. That's when it hit me. Life was still moving forward. My grief was real, but it wasn't the whole world. And that simple awareness helped me breathe a little deeper and take another step forward. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Look down from above on the countless gatherings and countless ceremonies, every kind of voyage and storm and calm, and the disputes between those being born, living together, and dying. He was saying that when you see the bigger picture, you realize that every event, no matter how big it feels in your own life, is still just one small moment in an endless flow. I once worked with a woman named Sarah, 57 years old. She had been let go from her management position after more than 20 years with the same company. To her, it felt like the end of everything. But when I guided her through the view from above exercise, imagining herself looking down from above, higher and higher until she could see the entire earth, she started to laugh. She said, "John, when I see it from up there, that job looks like a single grain of dust on the giant map of my life." And that's exactly what a wider perspective gives you. It shrinks what once looked enormous and puts it back into its true size. Modern psychology calls this reframing, changing the frame through which you see a problem. When you change the frame, your emotions change too. The worry no longer dominates everything, and you create more space to actually find solutions. I know many people in their 50s and 60s face real losses. Health isn't what it used to be. Children grow up and move away. Friends become fewer. If you focus only on what's gone, life will feel smaller. But if you widen your view, you'll see what's still here, the things you still have, the relationships you haven't fully appreciated, and the opportunities still waiting for you. Picture it like this. You're standing in front of a massive oil painting. If you press your face up close to one corner, all you'll see are messy brushstrokes and random splashes of color. But if you step back, you'll see the whole painting, its colors, its light, and the story it tells. Life works the same way. When you step back, you start to see the meaning of the dark patches alongside the bright ones. Ask yourself, will the problem you're facing today still matter 5 years from now? If you could look down from space at the earth, would that problem still fill your mind? When I began practicing this shift in perspective, I noticed something interesting. The problems didn't instantly disappear, but they lost their power over my emotions. And to me, that is a kind of freedom. The Stoics never told us to dismiss everything or become numb to life. They simply taught us to put things in their right proportion. Don't let a single event, a single person, or a single failure define your whole self. You are more than that. You are the sum of your experiences, your values, and the quiet everyday moments you may have forgotten to cherish. Epictetus once said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." When you change your perspective, you don't just change how you feel about a problem, you change how you live with it. So next time a problem consumes your mind, try stepping back. Imagine looking down from an airplane, or even from the window of a space station. See yourself as just one small part of a much bigger picture, a picture that keeps being painted, no matter how much you're worrying about today's little brushstroke. Because when you see the bigger picture, you don't just watch your problems shrink, you watch your life expand. And here's an interesting paradox I've noticed after years of working with people. The sharper and more intelligent the mind, the easier it is to trap yourself in an endless loop of analysis and imagination. Sounds strange, right? We usually think a high IQ is an absolute advantage. And yes, it helps you solve problems faster, spot connections others miss. But with that gift comes a subtle trap. You see too many possibilities, and your brain refuses to stop analyzing them. I once had a friend named Mark, a retired engineer at 62. He was the kind of guy you could ask any question, and he wouldn't just give you one answer. He'd give you 5 or 6, each with a detailed breakdown of pros and cons. It was impressive, until he had to make a decision for himself. I remember when Mark wanted to sell his old house and move somewhere quieter. He built a spreadsheet with over 30 columns: location, taxes, climate, resale value, neighbors, distance to the hospital. You name it. He analyzed each area for 3 months, but after all that time, he still hadn't chosen, because in his mind, every option came with an if and a worst-case scenario. When I asked Mark, "What's keeping you from deciding?" he gave me a tired smile and said, "I think I'm just thinking too much." Marcus Aurelius warned about this centuries ago. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. But when your mind is too busy, finding that quiet can be the hardest thing in the world. Modern psychology has a name for this: analysis paralysis, being stuck because you're overanalyzing. When you're highly intelligent, your brain keeps generating scenarios and consequences, making you feel like you never have enough information to move forward. And when that's paired with a vivid imagination, you start creating scenarios that don't even exist. This is why so many highly intelligent people are also more prone to anxiety. They're great at predicting potential risks, but they can also turn rare risks into constant obsessions. I want you to ask yourself, how many times have you delayed action just because you wanted to be a little more certain? How many worst-case scenarios have you imagined that never actually happened? I once worked with a woman named Helen, 58, a former CFO. She had an incredible ability to analyze numbers, but when it came to her personal life, like deciding whether to remarry, she fell into an endless loop of what-ifs. What if I get married? What if I don't? What if he gets sick? What if I lose my freedom? I asked her, "Helen, what's keeping you from making a decision?" She sighed. "I want to be sure, but I'm starting to realize that certainty might never come." So what would the Stoics say in situations like this? Epictetus had a line I've always loved: first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. They never dismissed the value of analysis, but they made it clear that thinking must lead to action. If you stay in the analysis zone forever, you'll miss the best window to act. When your intellect is a sharp tool, it's like holding a fine knife. That knife can make precise cuts, but if you keep turning it over in your hands, measuring every angle, you'll never cut anything at all. I've learned a simple rule for myself: think just enough to take action, not so much that you end up paralyzed. And that requires accepting a hard truth: you will never have 100% of the information you want. And that's okay. One thing I often tell my students is to set a limit on the analysis loop. For example, give yourself 48 hours to research, list the pros and cons, and then make the call. Don't give your brain extra time to invent scenarios you don't need. And more importantly, remember this: intelligence isn't just about the ability to analyze. It's also about knowing when to let go once you've thought enough. It's like sailing. You can't sit on shore forever, trying to guess which way the wind will blow. At some point, you've got to get in the boat, raise the sails, and let real-life experience guide you. When you take action, you'll learn something every Stoic already knows: reality is always different from what you imagined. And once you accept that, you stop getting stuck in the loop and start moving forward. So, if you recognize yourself as the type who overthinks because you know too much, try these 3 things. Get crystal clear on what you truly want. the end result you're aiming for. Put a hard time limit on your analysis and stick to it. Act. Then adjust as you go, instead of trying to be perfect from the start. Because in the end, intelligence only matters if it leads you to a full, lived life, not if it traps you inside the maze of your own mind. I've lived long enough to know this. Most of the worst decisions in life don't come from a lack of knowledge. They come from emotions flaring in the moment. Anger, fear, envy, confusion. Those things can make you forget what's truly important. But there's one skill the Stoics train for a lifetime: observing yourself from a distance. When you can do that, it's like stepping outside your own mind and looking at the whole picture. You're no longer swept away by the wave of emotion. You're standing on the shore, watching it. A few years ago, one of my students, Peter, 55, told me a story. He was driving when another car suddenly cut him off, nearly causing an accident. Rage shot through him. His hands gripped the wheel. His mouth was ready to fire off a string of angry words. But right then, he remembered an exercise I'd taught him. Mentally take a step back. He imagined himself sitting in the back seat, watching the man in the driver's seat. From that viewpoint, he saw a middle-aged guy, face flushed, heart pounding, all because of a stranger on the road. And then he asked himself, do I really want to give a complete stranger the power to decide how my whole day feels? He took a deep breath, loosened his shoulders, and let the other car go. The sense of relief came almost instantly. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." When you step back and watch yourself from a distance, you activate that power. You disconnect from the emotional trigger and shift into a state of choice instead of reaction. In psychology, this is called self-distancing, creating mental space between you and your immediate emotions. Studies show that when people talk to themselves in the third person, "John, take it easy," instead of "I need to calm down," or imagine themselves from an outside perspective, they're able to manage emotions better, reduce stress, and make clearer decisions. The Stoics knew this thousands of years ago, even without the scientific terms. They simply said, be the spectator of your own mind. I want you to think about a recent situation that made you angry or anxious. If, in that moment, you could have watched yourself from the outside, like you were watching a scene in a movie, what would you have seen? Would you have seen a person truly facing a crisis? Or just someone caught in a temporary wave of stress? Would you have judged it worth sacrificing your peace for? Or would you have seen it as just a small ripple in a much larger ocean? I had a moment like this back in 2001, when the company I was running as CEO was on the brink of bankruptcy. Shareholders were breathing down my neck, employees were worried, and I was haunted by visions of failure. One night, I sat alone in my office, the warm yellow light pooling across my desk. I closed my eyes and imagined I was standing in the corner of the room, looking down at myself. From that angle, I saw a 36-year-old man, tired, yes, but still trying to do the right thing. And in that moment, it hit me. The company might go under, but that man would still have his values, his experience, and his resilience. And right then, I felt half the weight lift off my shoulders. When you learn to watch yourself from a distance, you start to realize something important. Emotions are temporary, but your values and principles, those are what last. Anger will pass, fear will fade. But how you choose to act while those emotions are running high, that's what stays with you. And sometimes that choice shapes the rest of your life. The Stoics didn't believe in suppressing emotions. They simply refused to let emotions take the wheel. They still felt them, deeply, but they stayed in the driver's seat, not their feelings. And the ability to step back and observe yourself is the key to making that possible. I often tell my students one simple line: distance creates clarity. When you stand too close to a painting, all you see are messy brushstrokes. But when you step back, you see the whole picture. And you understand why each stroke is exactly where it is. Life is no different. Observing from a distance helps you see what truly matters. And what's just background noise. So the next time you feel yourself getting swept away by emotion, stop. Take a deep breath. Picture yourself standing in the corner of the room, or looking down from above. See yourself as just one character in a much bigger story. Then ask, in this story, what really matters? The answer might surprise you. More often than not, it's not about winning or losing, being right or wrong, or who comes out ahead. It's about holding on to yourself, your calm, and your self-respect. Anyone who's ever trained their body knows muscle doesn't appear overnight. You build it through repetition, through practice over time. The mind works the same way. The calm resilience the Stoics prized as one of life's greatest treasures doesn't come from a single moment of enlightenment. It comes from habits, small, repeated exercises every day. And the view from above is one of the most powerful exercises I know for building what I call mental muscle. I've met plenty of people who think calmness is something you're born with. They'll say, "John, I'm just not the calm type. I've got a short fuse, I get anxious easily." But the truth is, I used to be that way too. I wasn't born calm, I trained it. Every time life threw a challenge at me, I treated it like a weight for the mind. One more rep, one more set. Over time, those mental muscles grew stronger. I remember more than 20 years ago, when I was running a small company, we lost a major contract at the very last minute. The news came in on a Monday morning. It felt like someone had just kicked the chair out from under me. My heart was racing, my mind spinning with 100 questions. How am I going to pay my employees? What will other clients think? Is this the end of the road? But then, I forced myself to stop. I sat down, closed my eyes, and practiced what the Stoics call the view from above, imagining myself stepping out of my body, standing in the corner of the room, then rising higher, high enough to see the city, the country, and finally the earth itself, small and fragile in the vastness of space. And from that view, the lost contract was just one small event, nowhere near enough to destroy my entire journey. When I opened my eyes, I still had to deal with the consequences, but I was no longer shaking. I had stepped into the mental gym and lifted a heavier weight than before. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The strength he was talking about isn't the power to force the world into submission. It's the power to hold your ground while the world spins in chaos. And like every other muscle, it has to be trained. Modern psychology agrees. Studies on resilience, the ability to bounce back from hardship, show that people who regularly practice reframing and cognitive distancing stay calmer when crises hit. It's not because they face fewer problems. It's because their minds have been in the gym, training for it. I want you to picture this. Every time something irritates you, worries you, or throws you off balance, instead of reacting right away, treat it like a workout. Step back, take a slow, deep breath. Apply the view from above exercise. At first, You'll still feel the discomfort, just like your muscles ache the first time you lift weights. But if you keep at it, little by little, your ability to stay composed will grow stronger. And one day, when a truly big storm hits, you'll be surprised to find you don't get swept away so easily anymore. I once coached a woman named Maria, 61 years old, who had just gone through a divorce after more than 30 years of marriage. The loss left her feeling empty, like her entire life had collapsed. We started with small exercises. Every time she felt that wave of heartache, she would close her eyes and imagine herself standing on top of a mountain, looking down at the entire city, millions of people living, loving, losing, and starting over. At first, she said, "John, I do this and it still hurts." I told her, "Of course it does. But think of it like training a muscle, your mental muscle. Every time you do this, you're teaching your mind that you are bigger than this pain." 6 months later, she told me, "I still remember what I lost, but I don't feel like I'm drowning anymore. I feel steadier on my feet." The Stoics never promised you'd never be hurt. What they taught was how to make sure that when pain comes, it doesn't destroy you. And the habit of the view from above is one of the best training tools to make that possible. I want you to remember this. Mental strength, like physical strength, isn't built in times of comfort. It's forged in difficulty. Every disruption is an opportunity to train. And the more you train, the calmer you become. So next time life pushes you out of your comfort zone, try these 3 steps. Pause. Take a deep breath. Don't react right away. Step back. Practice the view from above. Shrink the event down to its true size. Move forward. Keep your calm. Then act according to your values and long-term goals. Repeat this enough, and you'll start to notice a change. One day, you'll realize the storms aren't any smaller, but you've gotten stronger. There's a common misunderstanding I've seen people have about Stoicism, especially when it comes to looking from above or staying calm in the middle of chaos. They think it's a form of avoidance. That if you're not reacting strongly, not worrying, not getting angry, then you must be ignoring the problem. But the Stoics never told you to abandon life. They told you not to let a problem consume you so completely that you lose your ability to think clearly. I once had a friend named Alan who ran a small business. One day, he got bad news. One of his biggest clients had gone bankrupt, leaving behind a massive unpaid bill. The news hit like a punch to the gut. Most people in his position would panic, start liquidating assets, lay off employees immediately. But Alan was different. I asked him, "Why haven't you done anything yet?" He replied, "Because if I react while I'm panicking, I'll make the wrong choice. I need my head clear first." That week, he spent time getting his mind in order, walking more, avoiding an overload of negative news, and practicing the view from above every single morning. Only when he felt truly calm did he start renegotiating with partners and looking for new revenue streams. The result? His business not only survived the crisis, it found an entirely new direction to grow. Alan wasn't avoiding the problem. He was simply refusing to let fear and panic take the wheel. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." It doesn't mean you deny reality. It means you adjust your mindset so you can respond wisely to that reality. Modern psychology backs this up. When you're in a fight or flight state because of stress, The parts of your brain responsible for logic and sound decision-making actually go offline. In that moment, if you take action, you're far more likely to choose something impulsive, short-term, and sometimes disastrous. The Stoics understood this long before neuroscience proved it. They knew that staying calm isn't hesitation. It's preparing your mind so you can act correctly. I want you to picture this. You're in the middle of a rushing river, being pulled by the current. If you panic and thrash in all directions, you'll burn out and possibly drown. But if you stay calm, observe the flow, you can find a way to swim diagonally with the current until you reach the shore. The difference isn't whether you swim or not, it's whether you swim with a clear mind or a panicked one. I remember a time when I was working with a woman named Linda, 60 years old, who had just been diagnosed with a chronic illness. She told me, "I was so scared, I didn't even want to hear the rest of what the doctor had to say. I just wanted to walk out." I told her, "Linda, avoiding it won't make the illness go away. But if you let fear take over completely, you won't hear the information you need to treat it." We practiced a simple exercise together. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and imagined looking down from above the exam room, seeing herself sitting there with the doctor, seeing the hospital, even the whole city carrying on with life. When she opened her eyes, she said, "I'm still scared, but now I can listen." And because she listened, she got the full picture, and that's how she found the treatment plan that worked for her. The important thing here is this: calmness isn't ignoring the problem, it's creating enough space for reason and instinct to work together, instead of fighting each other. I want you to ask yourself, how many times in your life have you reacted too quickly and later wished you had waited? How many times did a situation get worse simply because you let emotion take the wheel? If your answer is too many, this is your chance to build a new habit. Step back, clear your head, then act. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Once you understand this, you'll stop seeing calmness as passivity. You'll start seeing it as a proactive strategy, a way to make smarter decisions. So next time life throws something at you, try these 3 steps. Name the emotion. Say it out loud to yourself. I'm angry. I'm anxious. This helps you separate yourself from the feeling, create distance. Use the view from above to see the problem as just one small part of a much bigger picture. Decide when your mind is steady. Act based on your values and long-term goals, not on a spike of emotion. Do that, and you'll find you're no longer consumed by the problem. You still face it, but with a mind clear enough to find the best way forward. You can't stop the wind from changing, but you can always adjust your sails. And sometimes, just shifting your perspective is enough to see the sky as bigger than the storm. Life will never be perfect, but you can choose to walk through it with a steady mind. So if today you find yourself in the middle of a storm, try climbing a little higher, looking down, and asking, what really matters? You might be surprised to realize most of the things you're worried about are just small ripples in a vast ocean. If you've ever had a moment where your perspective changed everything, share your story in the comments. Who knows? Your story might be the light someone else needs to find their calm again.